Alfred Hitchcock is often referred to as the master of suspense, and this is demonstrated in one of the most famous scenes in cinematic history, the shower scene from his 1960s hit Psycho. The scene was revered for both its editing and sound. The following essay will run through the scene, paying particular attention to what sound is included and how this impacts the audience. The scene begins with diegetic sound, the tinking sound of the shower curtain being pulled, the turning on of the taps, and then the rush of water. The sound of the shower is the only thing that can be heard as Marion steps into the bath, giving the scene an unremarkable quality to it. There is nothing in it that would signify what is coming to the audience. The normalcy of the scene and the sound accompanying it so far almost lulls the audience into a false sense of security. This differs from traditional thriller horror films, as non-diegetic sound in the form of suspenseful music would often come in earlier in the scene to build a climax, but here, Hitchcock has intentionally left this out, making the events to follow all the more surprising and thrilling to the audience.
The first image we have of the killer appears as he pulls back the curtain, raises his knife above his head, and suspenseful music begins to play. Specifically, what is played here is the famous track titled The Murder by Bernard Herrmann. This track consists of loud screeching violins, violas, and cellos, creating a piercing sound that closely resembles a human scream. This combination of image and sound signifies to the audience that this is someone who they should be very scared of. The next simultaneous sound we hear is Marion's screams, adding to the creation of a very piercing, unsettling, and uncomfortable soundtrack. Even though we don't actually see Marion get stabbed, the inclusion of stabbing sound effects creates a visceral and disturbing experience for the audience. These sound effects were achieved by a Foley artist stabbing a watermelon many times, and the result is a very realistic sound effect, adding further shock value to the scene. Again, in combination with the close-up of Marion screaming, the blood flowing down the drain, and Norman repeatedly raising his knife above his head, the audience is left with a very shocking and scary scene.
When Norman leaves the bathroom, so too does the high-pitched sound. Instead, it is replaced with a slower, deeper melody. This signifies to the audience that the scary part is over, as they are now left with the dying Marion. The soundtrack fades as Marion slowly sinks to the floor. It finally stops when Marion hits the floor and the scene returns to the same diegetic sounds it began with. In contrast, the scene feels eerily quiet, still and silent, almost as the audience is left to sit there and reflect on the brutal scene that they have just witnessed.
What the hell was that? What are you doing? What are you doing? Hey!
Like the stabbing, this part of the scene feels like it goes on for a bit too long. The length adds to the audience's discomfort. They have just been confronted with an abrupt and shocking murder scene, and now they are left to sit in what feels like silence, watching diluted blood fall down the plug hole and given close-up images of Marion's dead eye. Ultimately, the sound here functions to create a scene of tension and terror within the audience, and the skill with which it achieves this is why Hitchcock is seen as being one of the greats in film directing.